If you have been on Elon Musk's Twitter feed lately, and by that I really just mean if you have been on Twitter lately, since to go on Twitter is to see Elon Musk's Twitter feed, then you know one thing. The greatest threat to American democracy today are district court judges. Yes, there is a scourge of radical activist district judges that has infiltrated America. Either that, or coincidentally, the Trump administration is put before every activist radical judge that we happen to have in this country, because every judge that the Trump administration is put before is a radical activist judge. But there is one judge in particular who most recently has drawn the ire of the conservative machine. This is Judge James Boasberg of the District of Columbia. Elon Musk recently said this about him: he's a radical activist cosplaying as a judge. Donald Trump on Truth Social said this about James Boasberg: this radical left lunatic of a judge, a troublemaker and agitator who was sadly appointed by Barack Hussein Obama, was not elected president. He didn't win the popular vote. He didn't win all 7 swing states. This judge, like many of the crooked judges I am forced to appear before, should be impeached. He then also, about the same, just one dude, Donald Trump then also went on Fox News and said this.
Many people have called for his impeachment, the impeachment of this judge. I don't know who the judge is, but he's radical left. He was Obama appointed. And he actually said we shouldn't be able to take criminals, killers, murderers, horrible, the worst people, gang members, gang leaders, that we shouldn't be allowed to take them out of our country.
Now look, that sounds troubling. That sounds like just the kind of pink-haired radical we don't want sitting on the bench. Of course, none of it is true. That's not what the ruling said. He was only sort of an Obama appointee. And not only is this man not radical left, what if I told you he literally got Donald Trump elected in 2016? This is honestly not clickbait. We will break this down. This whole thing is crazy. This notion that the job of judges is not almost explicitly to check the power of the other branches of government, the executive branch being one of them, is nuts. This is what the judiciary is supposed to do. So let's break down what is going on. My name is Carly Riley. This is the Carly P. Riley Show. I am trying to understand this moment in political history, in American politics. I am constantly trying to break out of my own echo chamber, so I'm looking at sources from the left and the right and not married to anyone. I am looking at primary sources as much as I can, go to the actual judge's rulings like in the case like this. If this sounds interesting to you, would love if you would subscribe and or share this episode if you get some value out of it. Let's back up here for a moment to 2016. Donald Trump, against all odds, had gotten himself the Republican nomination for president. He was running against Hillary Clinton, who at the time, everyone, including I imagine Trump himself, thought was going to win the presidency. But then in the weeks and days before the election, there was a bomb dropped.
This morning, the FBI is looking into the private email server that Hillary Clinton used as Secretary of State.
Hillary Clinton had used a private email server from her own private residence while employed by the government, as opposed to using a government server as she was supposed to do. Now, James Comey, the then director of the FBI, issued a statement saying they were investigating this situation, and a flood of Hillary Clinton's emails were released, keeping the flames of the scandal going right up until Election Day. Now, the Hillary Clinton campaign would later partially blame this whole situation on why she lost the 2016 election, which is a little rich. Hillary Clinton was seen as corrupt, out of touch, inauthentic, and the perfect poster child for a system that the electorate no longer wanted. And that is why she lost the 2016 election. But she's not entirely wrong to point to this as being a big deal in the scheme of her campaign. Look at this MSNBC clip from a few years ago that talks about just what a big deal this email scandal was in the mind of many voters, despite the fact that it would later turn out that nothing nefarious really came from this.
In 2016, the Gallup polling firm regularly asked voters to describe what they had read, heard, or seen about the two presidential candidates. Researchers took those descriptions and they made them into word clouds. It's a kind of infographic. The more frequently a word is used, the bigger it appears. This was the word cloud for Donald Trump, a collection of the words and themes that were driving his campaign. And this was Hillary Clinton, a cloud with one massive word in the middle: email.
Like, that's crazy. It also speaks to the fact that Hillary Clinton did such a bad job with her own messaging that the only thing that people thought about were her emails, but it also speaks to the centrality of the email scandal at the time. And the timing of this was what was so critical. This all came out in the months, weeks, and days leading up to the November election in 2016, which is interesting because the discovery of the private email server, the core of the scandal, was actually something that was discovered in 2015.
So why did this become such a big thing in 2016 during the election year? Well, in May of 2016, a judge ruled that the State Department was required to expedite their release of all of Hillary Clinton's emails. A conservative watchdog group had filed a FOIA request, a Freedom of Information Act request, requesting all of these emails that had been held on this private server, and a judge ruled that all of those emails did in fact need to be released, and that the State Department, which had been delaying releasing those emails, had to expedite them and release them as soon as possible. This happened in May of 2016. And the emails were released in batches over the next several months, which took us right up into the 2016 election. Do you know where I'm going with this? Do you know who the judge who ordered the expedited release of those emails was? It was Judge James motherfucking Boasberg, the exact same judge that Trump is now out there calling a radical leftist on Fox News. And that is not even the last time that Judge Boasberg handed Trump a beautifully gift-wrapped, ornate present right to his doorstep. Because less than a year later in 2017, he once again ruled for Trump when he said that Trump did not have to release his tax returns. Something that would no doubt show that Trump has not paid a cent of income tax in 35 years plus. And for all of Donald Trump's talk about this being a Barack Hussein Obama appointee, Judge Boasberg was actually originally appointed to the bench by George Bush, before then later being appointed to a higher court by Barack Obama and confirmed by the Senate in a 96-0 vote. So this leads us to two options. Perhaps, since tanking Hillary Clinton's hope of an electoral victory in 2016, which inadvertently handed the election to, checks notes, Donald Trump, and also preventing, check notes again, Donald Trump from having to release his tax returns in 2017, which also helped him save face with the electorate. Perhaps since that time, the 62-year-old Judge James Boasberg has become a flaming pink-haired liberal who takes his chia seed enemas on the weekend and then likes to let roaming gangs of criminals loose in the streets of America during the week. Or perhaps the Trump administration has so egregiously violated due process in these deportation attempts, and frankly other things they have tried to do in this administration, that even Judge James Boasberg, who has been very sympathetic to a number of conservative watchdog groups, was forced to issue a temporary restraining order on the facts of the case as they exist, in order to make sure that we are not just a nation of lawlessness driven by the executive branch who seems to think they can do whatever they want, whenever they want, and then accuse any judge who tries to stop them from doing that as being an activist radical. It's a toss-up. One of the two options. Who can really say? If only the court proceedings were publicly available for everyone to read. This is also the irony as you read these court filings and it's like a bunch of rhetoric about habeas and what statute applies here. Like, it's boring. The idea that these are radical activists could not be further from the lived reality of reading these legal filings and going, wow, this is a snooze. In any case, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Chief Justice Roberts, issued a statement after Trump's post on Truth Social in which he called him a radical leftist lunatic. And he said, for more than 2 centuries, it has been established that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning a judicial decision. The normal appellate review process exists for that purpose. So this is, again, responding to the fact that Trump in that Truth Social post had said that this judge should be impeached. You have members of the Republican Party who have already filed to impeach this judge. Now, there's no reason to think it's going to actually move forward. Mike Johnson has, up to this point, actually held the further right flanks of the Republican Party at bay when it comes to these impeachments. But it does feel like the momentum for this is growing within the Republican Party, which is perhaps why Chief Justice Roberts took this very rare step of issuing a statement about current events, which is something that the Supreme Court very rarely does. Because look, I can handle policy debates. You want to debate immigration policy, you want to debate economic policy and tariffs and so many things that the Trump administration is doing that the left may not like or the right, even elements of the right may not like. Fine, you can have a debate about that. But to have a debate about policy in America, you need to have an America. The country needs to still stand. And the fabric of the country, the underpinning of the American democratic experiment, as we know it, not to sound high-minded about this, is this separation of powers that has the ability to check each other. The judiciary having the power to check the executive branch is one of the core functions of our government, just as the executive being able to check Congress with the power of a veto is one of the core functions of the system. All of these branches can check one another, and that is what keeps America great. I am not wholesale opposed to Elon Musk getting on Twitter and criticizing the judgment of any particular judge. But you can't just call every judge you don't agree with an activist judge. In any case, that is our episode for today. Please let me know what you think. Would love to know your thoughts. And with that, I'll see you next time.